I'm Mina Malik Hussain, and you're watching The Coffee Table. So today we've got a super interesting show. I know I say this every time, but it's always true. And today we're going to be talking about mental health again, because you see at The Coffee Table, we're very invested in your mental health. But this time we're talking about mental health with a slightly different angle, and we're going to be talking about children's mental health and what we can do to help our kids be healthier and happier people. And growing up, how can we support them in their journey and all the different challenges that kids nowadays are facing that we should be aware of as adults in their lives. And joining me today on set is Iram Irshad, who is a psychologist and also the founder of the Center for
Positive Psychology.
Positive Psychology. More on that later. And we've got Syeda, Ayesha, Sheeraz.
Yes.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Who is also, before I keep saying hi to people, but Ayesha is also a clinical psychologist and an educationist. And we've got these two wonderful experts on set, and I'm very excited to dive right in. So thank you for coming, guys.
Thank you for inviting
It's a pleasure to have you on my white sofa.
Likewise.
So, Iram, tell me, you are a PhD scholar and you are doing a great deal of research on happiness.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Okay, we are basically establishing for the first time in Pakistan Happiness Research Lab, which is this is going to be the first initiative where we are going to compile Pakistan's perception of happiness and three stakeholders we have chalked out: students, teachers, and employees. That we are going to gauge that what are the elements which makes which makes employees happy. What are the elements which engages teachers more than other professions, and then students' academic stress. We are going to conduct research. So we are collaborating with different marketing research organizations where we can conduct this research across the country. And then what is the hope out of this research? That we would have our own personal, very customized understanding of happiness. Yes, what are the markers or denominators of happiness in the West? We are always borrowing that yes, so and so person has come up with this theory and all that. But what actually defines, what is the general perception of Pakistani people?
That's really, I think, very important, because there is a happiness index, a sort of global
well-being
happiness
index. No, actually there are like a lot of work going on in UAE. They have already developed happiness ministry. They have developed
Ministry of Happiness.
Ministry of Happiness. They are working. Given Dubai is like being re-established under the guidelines of Smart Dubai City Plan, which means that they are going to have happiness formula, and they are going to revolutionize the whole system of their city on the guidelines of happiness, the science of happiness.
Wow, so happiness is an actual science. It's sort of becoming a scientific thing now. And as a teacher and as somebody in a classroom, Ayesha, do you see this sort of becoming something that can be academized?
101%. I think she's rightly pointed out that there's a need to focus on this positive side of the individuals, talking about the happiness. Since majority of the people, when they talk about psychology, automatically we have this unconscious perception of psychology as we are talking about depression and anxiety, suicide. So why not happiness? Psychology is a part, because what is the goal of the psychology is to bring the real potential out of the people, how they can perform at the optimal level, and that will bring happiness in every class, in every gender,
across
in every exactly. So I think it's very important. Majority of the people, majority of the students who are sitting in front of me in my classroom, I think they're usually happy people. But one thing that is for sure that I notice, they are a bit confused what they want out of their life, who they are, what is their identity, what they want to lead their life, and what is actually going to make them happy. They have this illusion.
But isn't that a natural thing at a certain age to kind of be thinking about, who am I, what am I going to do with my life, what direction moving forward? But somehow, and again, maybe somehow is a sort of silly word to say here, but it seems that mental health in young people in this particular era is becoming more troubling and more problematic for them. And, and because this is probably, I'm assuming, linked to happiness. So if young people are feeling less happy, are they feeling less happy now than they were maybe 15 years ago? Young people 15 years ago were happier.
Have you ever noticed that each one of us, from like we hail from lower middle class or upper middle class, our quality of life has improved significantly. But when it comes to life satisfaction, happiness, we are under great stress, and I think there is a lot of question marks. So I'm just linking it with your question that it's normal. Yes, it's normal. It used to be present even 20 years ago while I was growing, while our mothers were growing. But why it is higher now? Because of the dynamics. It's called information technology, the world that is like, dramatically changing. And I would bring it to this, that the social media and the quality of time we spend with each other has immensely affected.
Decreased
I mean, the quality has been affected. So we may per se are together, but not necessarily. In actuality, we are not there.
That's, I think, really interesting, because the modern child or the modern young person, like you said, our quality of life has improved. So, you know, our houses are better, our healthcare is better.
Life is so easy.
You know, life expectancies are longer.
Health facilities.
Transport is better.
Facilities. You can communicate with your loved one just by sitting here. I agree with that. But I'm going to agree with that point of view, that the quality of interaction, the quality of communication has actually decreased because of the social media. You see, if we have to have a very strong check and balance of the amount of time that we are spending, and it's very stimulating, it's addictive. You know, when you open the Facebook or you open the YouTube, you scroll through one video and then you want to see the other video also.
And apparently, like your neurons are firing as if you were on drugs.
Exactly.
It's that same physical response.
It's addictive. And somehow, somewhere unconsciously, we are making comparisons. Somehow we see other people, how they're enjoying it so much. And then that question mark, are we supposed to be here, or we are supposed to be on the other side of the thing?
And then life satisfaction is taking a hit.
Absolutely.
And nothing is enough.
And nothing is enough.
You see, you achieve like PhD or do what? Postdoc is waiting on me, right?
Absolutely.
So you do whatever. You achieve no matter what. But still there would be some post would be better than that or higher than that. I think
that attitude of gratitude. You know, that is something very significant when we talk about happiness. And yes, majority of the students, majority of the young minds, I think
I would pick one word from your, like you were saying, purpose, right? So now this again, when there is like a lot of information, it has again made us more confused. You see, you have more options.
Many choices.
You see, previously you didn't have any option and you were confused. Now you have too many options and you are confused.
Oh no, we're still confused.
Exactly. And you know what? I am going to confess that I think at a particular point of time, I was also confused, and I was a victim of the same thing. I was looking at one of my friends, she's doing this and she's doing that, she's going there. Am I supposed to be here? And I was, for a particular period of time, I was actually being distracted. And that actually, for that particular period of time, actually reduced the level of satisfaction, what you call it, or satisfaction of the level of gratitude. That was actually affected. And when that is affected in me, that is definitely going to affect the people who are surrounding me at the same time.
So there has to be a sort of balance to ambition also, I suppose, because it's not a bad thing to want things, and it's not a bad thing to have plans and to sort of, you know, want to make something of yourself and your life.
Being ambitious is fine, but
but where do you draw the line?
But I think this new disease, I call it this perfectionism. I think it's a disease. I mean, nothing is perfect in the real world. I mean, you need to agree to your helplessness. There are some part of life that you just cannot control.
I agree.
So people, those who are having OCDs and people, and even young youth is like, because they get everything very easily these days. So they don't know that what is the cost, what is the price of all these
What are going
things.
to be the consequences?
So their demands and expectations are really high, and they set somehow unrealistic goals and ambitions for themselves, which obviously creates stress and anxiety. Let's say, we were under pressure because you had certain timeline to go by, that at this age marriage, then kids, and then retirement. But now they have like huge pressure of this A grades. We cannot deny and overlook that.
Yes.
So first of all, we need to educate parents that this certificate or grades are not going to define the caliber of your child.
Right.
They need to have certain niche, certain strengths development, that where they are happy. There is like one portal with the name of Happy Child Summit. In America, they conduct annual summits where they are basically educating parents and teachers and all the society segment, different community developers, that how to raise a happy child, eventually happy individual, happy worker, and then happy society. So what we need to do is that before it becomes too late and they need to go to the counselors and psychiatrists and they need to go to drugs for fillers and all that, we should focus where we can make the bigger difference.
Sure.
And I
should
think
be focusing on the prevention strategies rather than looking at the recommendations or the treatment plans. I agree with that. Truly said. And there was a post on the social media that I was reading, that if your child is studying in a very good school, he's going for swimming, if the child is going and attending some seminars and having international trips, and if your child does not know how to regulate their emotions, none of the above is going to really matter. That's really, really important.
Absolutely.
That the concept of happiness and the concept of being, how to recognize your emotions, how to identify your emotions, and how to express them appropriately.
I think that's really important. Regulation of emotions, and which means you have to be able to recognize them in order to express them.
Yes,
and we're going to come back to this in just a second. We're going to go to a quick break. Come back soon. You don't want to miss what's up next. Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. We're going to teach you how to regulate your emotions, amongst other things. But before we get to that, Iram, you mentioned that there are happiness summits. And isn't it it sounds strange to me as a layperson that you actually have to learn how to raise a happy child? But one has always thought that happiness is a given in your childhood because you don't have stressful things happening to you. All you have to do is play and watch cartoons and do homework, and that's it. But our kids' lives are very different now. It's not that simple for them anymore, and that's making them unhappy. Clearly.
Exactly, because I think just the way we talked about the improvement of quality of life, so we need to be very specific in terms of gauging the life satisfaction. So let's say we are talking about how to raise a happy child, or why do we need to raise a happy child? Because when we are talking about youth depression, and depression coming as one of the biggest problem in modern times, and we need to go back to this point, that why we cannot nip this evil earlier. So there is already empirical data that happy child is healthier, the happy child is more responsible, happy child is having better character, cooperative, more empathetic, more having better conscience. Right? Now, happy child means that a person's self-esteem, self-concept is having positivity based on positive parent-child relationship. So the same thing that I was talking about, that since we don't take parenting as a serious thing, and we consider it,
especially in our culture.
Yes, in our culture, just like relationships, we think that never ask question about how to be a better wife or how to be a better partner, because it's a taboo or something.
And this happens in classrooms as well. And I'm sure you know, Ayesha, because you do teach, that culturally asking too many questions, it appears as trying to create trouble. You're just being troublesome by asking too many questions, by questioning your elders, and it's seen as a lack of respect as opposed to being encouraged as a way for a child to simply understand the world better.
Absolutely. I think there is also a need to bring this point on this table, that is, children should be taught the kind of words they are using in order to communicate. Now, certain times what is happening is usually what the kids, when they come up to me and they talk about the issues they're facing, especially at their home, they say they're talking about their usual concepts that my mother or my father is not really understanding. I have talked to my elder sister or brother. And like, how did you talk to them? They're usually saying that I had a fight. Usually, whatever the conversation, they ended up with a fight, loud voices. So that's the trick. Now, that's the way we have to stop them and we have to make them realize that this is not what is actually going to work. You need to be assertive. You need to choose your words very wisely. There is nothing wrong in communicating your needs, your desires, and there is absolutely fine. But the kind of body language you're using, the kind of eye contact you're making with your elders, the kind of words that you're using, you have to be very careful. That will determine where the conversation is going to go.
But isn't this really tricky? Because a lot of behavior children learn from what is being modeled in front of them. So if they have a parent, for example...
tricky is not the right word. I think sensitive. It's like it's because children are like, and every individual is very unique. You cannot say that I have got two other children and they were raised this way, I was doing the same, it worked previously, and why this time it didn't work.
So it requires reflection on the parent's behalf also to see what the child needs. So as a parent, you have to adjust your technique with your child.
And I would add one more thing, that you were saying that when a spouse fight in front of a child, and obviously they see that their relationship is not very healthy, that's one trouble. But sometimes when mother or father, one of the parent, is like upset and depressed in their own lives, and a child observes that my mother is not happy, they feel somehow that I am responsible, because child craves for parents' attention, and they want to enjoy that sense of belonging.
And I read somewhere that because children are socialized into thinking that their parents are always right, and they can't be wrong, so then I must be wrong.
And they cannot see their parents in trouble. So I'm not saying that you need to keep that fake faces, but I'm saying that being a parent is not an easy job.
Absolutely.
You need to keep that, it's very complex, because somebody is always having an eye on you. And the moment your
many eyes.
And then and what is the outcome of that? If the child is consistently seeing you depressed, he would want himself to do something to make you come out of that. And if you still don't, obviously he's a child, he cannot.
Of course, and it's not a child's job to do that.
He blames himself, and then self-esteem effects that I am not good enough to
help my mom. Absolutely, because there's a concept of learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness. Okay, what is that?
Learned helplessness is basically a concept that when you perceive that you do not have a control over your own environment, you cannot make decisions, you cannot make things according to your wishes. So that's the concept of learned helplessness. A child automatically, as she rightly pointed out, then when a child, because it's a natural need,
and you carry this learned helplessness ahead into adulthood as well.
Sometimes definitely,
and in many different behaviors.
101%. They are being,
my mind, I'm just like, oh my God.
One of the basic reasons even behind childhood depression is the concept of learned helplessness. When the child presume or he or she sees that he does not have a control over their environment, whether it's related to the parenting conflict, the separation, or something related to the object loss. It could be symbolic, it could be real, separation, death of a loved one, or when they do not get the required attention and support and the praise from their people that they really can relate to.
Caregivers.
Absolutely. So
and
that's
those
the
7
point.
years, they are the foundation of the
first
whole,
7 years of a child's life.
They are like foundation of the whole personality.
Wow.
You
That's
will disagree.
That's important.
But you know that some emotional experiences when you are having that actually translates into traumas. And when you are grown up and you are trying to fix it, that why I'm shopaholic, I mean, what am I going to get out of this?
That impulsivity in your behavior.
Yes, but the root cause is somewhere in your past, you see.
Some in your subconscious mind, something that you have experienced.
Exactly. So maybe feeling of that not enough, that you were trying to do more just to compensate that feeling.
Actually, sometimes what I feel, experiencing these negative emotions in your environment also helps you to build those capabilities, those potentials that makes you mindful the things that you are not going to do in the future.
Okay. But is it just kind of, if you are sort of contemplative and you think about this and you arrive to that, that would be really great. But a lot of people aren't able to develop this.
I don't know. You know what? I want to tell you something. There was once I asked this question to my students. And they were quite, in the initial years of their college, university life. And they were like, what is the concept of happiness? It's something that is more relevant to you. And you know what they said? If you have a lot of money and when you go home, it's all happy, and we have a lot of pizzas and burgers. And there is a stress-free life where there is, where the parents are not fighting. There was 2 to 3 students who mentioned that we don't want any fights at home. We don't want any conflicting environment when we go home. We want a happy thing. What is the thing? What are they actually focusing on? What they are focusing on is how to reduce those conflicts. What my stance is.
Which is kind of sad for a child to be thinking about how can I reduce conflict in my home.
It starts very early. It starts as early as 2 years old. The moment his emotional, I think, landscape is evolving, he starts trying to fix things. How can I fix it?
I truly agree with that. And sometimes I feel those learnings make them realize that these things are not required, and how emotions needs to be expressed appropriately. That those conflicts actually made them think what is the right behavior and what is the wrong behavior. Even those negative events made them evolve positively. So I feel this is my personal observation, why we need happy kids. Why? Because the incidence of depression, childhood depression, is increasing from this last several 2 decades. Do you know that?
Over the past 2 decades, childhood depression is on the rise.
Yes.
It's not just saying that children are ungrateful or that parents, it's not such a big deal.
I would
parents
also like
are
to
just
add one more area.
Because sometimes, people say that, well, children don't get depressed, and that's just, you're just being soft.
Yes,
and you're
people
just
have
overindulging a child.
Yes.
But another dimension to this child depression would be giving more autonomy to the child. Because that happiness elements, when you evaluate, one of the biggest pillar of happiness is when I feel that my efforts are mattering to the subject, or they are relevant, right? So if you are treating me as a puppet, you decide which school, you decide which subject, you decide what type of friends do I need to make. When you actually you actually share your role, as a consultant rather than being a manager. You are managing everything, don't do that, don't do this. So I think children are like shaping their sense of identity rather earlier nowadays because of the exposure, and they are very sharp in understanding and spotting what they like and what they don't. But being overprotective parents, I think they are also causing, and they're actually taking that autonomy away from them. So I know we are a lot better in terms of autonomy as compared to past generation, but still I think we need to accept this, that we need to let go that overprotectiveness, that they would never make a mistake.
Yes, I agree with that point as well. I think there should be a balance in what you are actually giving to your child. A little bit of autonomy and some control to your own self. That is quite necessary. Sometimes when the control or the resources are being misused, there where the problem starts.
Now, happy child is not equal to spoiled child.
This is very important.
Oh, the spoiled child is definitely predisposed to get depression.
Absolutely.
That's 100%.
We're going to take a quick break here because this is very crucial, and I want to spend a lot of time on this. That a spoiled child and a happy child is not the same thing. Very important. We'll see you in like 1 second. Come back soon. Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. We're still talking about happiness and how you're not spoiling your child if your child is a happy child. I'm very intrigued by this. Iram, tell me everything about it.
Yes, I want to make a distinction that being a happy child and spoiled child are two different things.
And trying to make your child happy doesn't mean that you indulge their every whim and you always say yes to them and you just sort of go with the flow.
Happy child is basically taking care of their emotional and psychological needs and being aware of the inner world of the child, right?
Okay.
So let's say whatever a child is going through in terms of emotional setbacks, a loss or happiness, right? You are there to enjoy, celebrate and give shoulder to that child.
Right.
This is what I'm focusing on, because being a psychologist or being having certain awareness on personality, I'm telling you that human beings are emotional beings more than rationality.
Right.
So we are always, our decisions and research even proves that wherever there is a conflict between emotion and reason, emotion always wins.
Really?
Yes.
And you know, we're increasingly in a world where it's better to be rational and being seen as emotional
because
is
education
problematic.
is promoting rationality, right? You do what is going to make you able to produce more money, right? So we are producing money-making machines, but where are they going? Are they happy with their lives? So, so I would say that spoiled child is a person, is a child which is basically parents have indulged them to various different things as a compensation of not being there with them.
Right.
So let's say if mother is working all day long and on way back home she calls and says, what do you want? McDonald's, you want toys? So she brings everything she can just to compensate that I wasn't there, because she is under a guilt. That
Absolutely.
Parents do this. A lot of fathers do this as well. And so to me, it's really sort of interesting that, like you said, our the focus of education is on being a good worker, is on making money, is getting A's, so you get into a good college. College means you get a good job. So it's really not about your emotions, not about, our structures are not somehow now developed to support our emotional growth. It's just about maybe intellectual growth or rational growth, but emotional growth is being completely
sidelined.
Agreed with that. However, I have seen a shift. People are getting aware of the fact because, as I told you earlier, the incidence of depression in childhood is getting increasing day by day.
Just to sort of interrupt you here, but how can you recognize these symptoms?
Oh, that's very important.
Like, how do you know that a child is depressed or is kind of veering towards depression, or that they are sort of they need more attention?
I believe the manifestation of depressive symptoms in every child is different, but the most common signs I would say that's the persistent. I'm going to word and I'm going to emphasize the word persistent feeling of sadness, feeling of low self-esteem, feeling of hopelessness, lack of concentration. There you will see a dramatic change in their sleep pattern, in their appetite. You would see getting, they may perform poor at the academics. The social relationship may suffer. Their daily life routine. Oh, very importantly, they usually complain about headaches. They usually complain about fatigue. They usually complain about stomach aches. These are the kids, and these are very, very important. Usually we misinterpret them as, maybe the child is seeking attention and so on and so forth.
Maybe they just have a stomach ache, kids are like, oh, my head aches, and you don't take it seriously.
Absolutely.
And I think it varies from
child
age
to child.
age.
Absolutely, child.
So younger children will...
Because let's say if you are not very, you haven't started speaking, a 2 years old child won't be speaking, but still he would, through his gestures, through crying, he is going to manifest that I didn't like my mother to be out so long. So there are like multiple ways a child is basically trying to tell you that I am not happy with the way you have been treating me.
To the extent, and to the extent in more severe cases, even children attempt suicide. They do develop
only just to
to get the attention. They want to
To feel special.
They want to feel special, and they want to get the attention of the people that I am in a serious need of support.
Yes.
I am going through something inner that requires attention.
Because for him or her is the whole world.
Absolutely.
I mean, let's say one discriminatory statement your cousin or your aunt or your uncle has just said, but you ignored, right? This social comparisons you were talking about, even this sibling comparisons. I mean, someone is fairer than the other, someone is taller than the other, someone is brighter than the other. I mean, this comparison is such a, I would say, damaging thing that it kills your self-esteem.
And these are things that you can't control either. If someone is better at math,
101%.
But
so every
for
child
that,
is
you
born
need to
with
set
certain
a foundation in the beginning, that where you actually develop such a positive self-esteem, where afterwards, whatever comes, you can handle it.
You can handle
it.
It's and that begins
cycle.
at home.
Yes, it's a whole cycle. You see, if the child is depressed, what is going to happen? And the child will automatically lose interest in the playable activities. The child is going to lose interest in school. The child is going to
pleasurable things. So they don't want to play. They don't want to meet their friends.
You will see a considerable change in their social activities. A considerable change in the social activities, what they were doing before and now what they're doing it.
And the difference is not just sort of general child moodiness.
It has to be persistent. It has to be persistent.
How long does it have to persist for it to become persistent?
Absolutely. If I talk about the criteria of depression, it requires 2 weeks persistent depression.
Okay.
Achha, you know what is the most important thing that I would like to mention? People usually do feel sad. It's okay.
Yes.
However, if your sadness start interfering into your personal day-to-day life and start deteriorating your life functioning, that is what I would raise the red flags.
Yes,
that's
and maybe where you were talking about being self-destructive.
Yes.
So, I mean, getting into things which you know they are like harmful, but still you choose to be because you think that this is, I'm going to get escape, and you are like trying to get an external filler.
Oh, yes,
they
get into unhealthy
coping. They're bad for you.
Yes, they get into. When if the child,
you know, a lot of young people cut this it's
self-harming.
Suicidal is not very common. However, people or children especially, they have suicidal behaviors, and it's, do you know that boys under the age of 10, they have attempted suicide and they have actually killed themselves. So this is usually girls do suicide attempts for attention seeking. That's what research says. But majority of the time, boys are more vulnerable of actually killing themselves.
And
why? Because, you know, they're impulsive. They're impulsive, and in that impulsivity, what they're doing it after that anger, after that distress, what they are doing it, they're actually going to go through. Actually, they don't mean it.
And also I feel maybe with boys especially, the pressure of masculinity is so intense that you are not allowed to have feelings.
I think masculine biggest challenge is rejection. And I think we need to train people, men especially, how to handle rejection.
Fear of embarrassment and stigmatization.
Again, it's a very negative emotion. Your whole, self-identity get collapsed because you think that, and I was reading the other day, just the way we are getting hurt by some physical hurt, emotional torture is equally bad on your personality.
Even rather than worst. I think I would put it on, being a psychologist, I'm going to be biased. I think the emotional torture, the emotional abuse that the child goes through.
To come out of that torture, they try to come up with these coping mechanisms where they try to become avengeful, that we need to hurt other people, or we need to, sometimes damage our own self.
They definitely adopt destructive behaviors.
With younger boys that I sort of know or interact with or just generally observed, I feel like with boys, the only sort of appropriate response for every emotion is to get angry. So I've seen boys who, when they're feeling scared, they get angry. When they're feeling sad, they get angry.
Now,
when they're
have
feeling
you ever
vulnerable,
noticed their pressures?
they just get
they are
angry.
not allowed to express that,
that
fear.
Embarrassment, that stigmatization. You know, what actually I'm not really happy about my observation so far that I have made. People do not go to the psychologist or going to the psychiatrist. Why? Because of that fear of embarrassment, that fear of stigmatization. Stigmatization is the biggest barrier to any mental health care.
And let's be very clear, seeing somebody for your mental health does not mean that you are mad doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you.
Please allow me to use this word, pagal.
Yes, you're not. There is nothing wrong with you.
And the most important, I think you can relate. Even we are called with certain things, paglo ke doctor. I'm sorry, I'm using that Urdu word, but yes, agreed. There's a lot of, you see, these stigmatization is their sort of. What would I call it? They have this negative attitude, they have negative belief, they are very misguided stereotypes related to the people who suffer from mental illness, and especially talking about the kids. People feel afraid, even the parents feel afraid talking about their childhood mental health. They would say, what people will say, this is such a small kid.
Or
and
you failed as a parent. If your child is struggling, then you somehow failed as a parent, which is also not fair at all.
And I don't understand this, that to accept failure is all right.
Yes.
We all fail.
We all fail.
But why do we live in this pseudo world of being perfect? This is like not real world. But we all try to cover it up by not revealing,
but Iram,
not being original.
I tell you one thing more. We have an access to a lot of people who come up to us and they talk about the things that they are actually having trouble with. Until they do not have the motivation to correct the things that are happening wrong in their life, we cannot really push them. There are people who I identified and I told them, and I actually pointed the things that are actually happening wrong, and I actually beforehand somehow sort of told about the consequences is going to be really bad. They did not listen. So until people do not have the motivation to overcome all these issues, to talk about the issues, to bring those awareness
I would
into
add one more thing with motivation. That is the first word you use, social support. Some loved one who is really invested for their welfare.
Or a friend.
So only then they would come out of that addiction or that crisis.
So how we are going to
But as a friend or as a family member, as somebody who cares for somebody else,
has to be there.
What can we do to help people who are struggling?
We can tell them that we are non-judgmental human beings. It's absolutely normal to feel depressed. It's absolutely normal to feel fearful. It's absolutely normal to feel rejected. It's absolutely normal to face failures.
Yes.
And also, if like
unconditional acceptance.
Unconditional support.
Unconditional acceptance is what we all seek. So because our society has set certain standards, if you want to get accepted, you need to do this. Parents set standards, a teacher set standards, everybody, even husband set standards. If you want to be my wife, do this.
And vice versa.
Vice versa. And then same, we repeat the cycle.
Yes.
So this is the polite, but actually what we are seeking is unconditional support. Why we love our friends? Because we don't have any fears with them. I mean, you go without makeup, you go, without wearing your best brand shirt, or you know that.
I do agree.
You are accepted anyway.
And that's the happiest you are around
happiest.
people
and
like
there is also research which says that it was conducted on students population, and they said they were happiest when they were with their friends, and second was when they were with their families.
Okay.
So unconditional acceptance.
Yeah, I agree.
But
like you said,
again, it is very difficult for me also to accept people unconditionally. I'm saying it's easier said than done.
I agree with that.
But what we are trying to do is, it's an ongoing process. You get up one morning and you say, I know it all. Next morning you say, oh, where exactly?
Where did it go?
I'm going to start from the scratch again.
Yeah.
So as people, in fact, we all need to work on our own mental health as well. I don't see anybody who claims that I'm mentally fully stable.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very
It
important.
comes and goes.
We all struggle.
And I think that's a really important note to kind of wrap the show up on also, is that we're all struggling.
Yes.
It's okay to, everybody has a bad day, everybody has good days. Some people have more bad days, some people might have less.
Yes.
But the thing is that we're all struggling, we're all in this together. And like Iram said, I feel that if we are more authentic with each other, if we're able to acknowledge and articulate our own failures and our own hopes,
101%. Recognize them.
and just be honest. And life isn't perfect, but it doesn't have to be a happy one.
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you so much, both of you, for being on the show. And I think that this was such a valuable conversation. And I know that all of you have had your minds blown. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. And we will see you next time on the coffee table. Bye now.